What are you doing?
In order to lower and raise the shields as quickly as possible, we're going to forgo the tractor beam and fly her in manually.
Manually? How often have you done this?
Actually, it's my first attempt.
They're back. The Star Trek gang returns to fight the Klingons and a Vulcan half-brother of Mr. Spock in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. It's one of 5 new films we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel Ebert. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is the 5th in the Star Trek series, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to say that it's the worst. Star Trek V is so slow to get moving and so confused in its plotting that it's going to be of interest, I think, mainly to Trekkies, and then only so they can analyze what's wrong with it. The movie begins with the crew of the Starship Enterprise being called back to the ship on an emergency basis, which means, of course, we find them in the midst of their shore leave on Earth. And here are Kirk, Spock, and Bones on vacation in the single silliest scene in all of Star Trek history.
Row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 lightly down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily.
Come on, Spock. Why didn't you jump in?
I was trying to comprehend the meaning of the words.
And if you think they don't practice that until they get it right, you're wrong. The Starship's mission, rescue 3 hostages who have been taken by a Vulcan named Sybok, whose hidden strategy is to capture the Enterprise.
I deeply regret this desperate act, but these are desperate times. I have no desire to harm these innocents, but do not put me to the test. I implore you to respond immediately.
Special effects have never been the strong point of the Star Trek movies, but this rough landing qualifies as one of the least convincing hardware scenes in the entire series.
Bird of prey bearing 105, Mark II.
Wilson!
Bouncing along there like balsa wood. When the plot finally gets underway, it involves a mission to penetrate the mysterious Great Barrier at the center of the galaxy, where Sybok believes mankind will find its Garden of Eden.
Every culture in existence shares this common dream of a place from which creation sprang. For us, that place will soon be reality.
The only reality I see is that I'm a prisoner on my own ship.
That's Lawrence Luckenbill as the skyjacking Vulcan there. How old are you? 43?
Yes.
And you're saying things like Mr. Spock's Vulcan half-brother, and I'm talking about the Great Barrier at the center of the galaxy with the Garden of Eden behind it. Is this a job for adults? I don't know. Star Trek V is one of the most oddly constructed movies I've seen in a while, with its almost endless introductory scenes where they laboriously gather all of these people from all of their vacations and tell them they have to go on this mission. Then it leads up to a plot so confused that some of the characters are introduced and then hardly ever seen again, just in the background at a cocktail party. After the Enterprise gets through the Great Barrier and into the galactic center, the story goes completely haywire, and I can think of at least 5 logical questions about what happens there that I doubt if anyone could answer on the basis of anything in this movie. I was also dismayed by the movie's closing scene showing the Enterprise crew and the dreaded Klingons as guests at the same party. I'll forgive them the lousy special effects, but turning the Klingons into nice guys holding a drink and making small talk is going too far.
I don't know where to begin, but let me try with, first of all, the presence of a tremendous amount of liquor in this movie. I was astonished to find that basically these guys are more than social drinkers. I'm talking about the Klingons, I'm talking about the crew of the Starship Enterprise.
The Vulcans?
Everyone's getting sloshed in this film. Maybe they've read the script. It is astonishing to hear these people sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and believe it or not, that's the payoff scene at the end of the picture, that they can sing Row, Row Your Boat. I mean, it's not emotional, it's laughable. I think the time has passed for any new developments in the hardware area. They rip off the sequence from Star Wars of the bar with all the grotesque animals. I mean, there's no energy in this picture whatsoever.
The movie was, it looks to me as if they started shooting at just about the point they should have started rewriting the script, because it's really out of whack. I mean, the first hour is just deadly dull. Nothing happens. And then when they get involved with the plot, I couldn't understand it.
No, it's
they bring
beyond
in
me.
David Warner, an excellent actor. He comes in, he's introduced, he's a character, he has lots of lines. Then what happens to him? I don't know.
There's some heavy editing that had to be done.
There are 3 or 4 characters like that in this movie who are introduced and then have nothing to do.
There are 3 or 4 storylines that are started out and, you know.
And the key, well, anyway, forget about the key questions about what's beyond the Great Barrier, because the key question is, why was it there to begin with?
Our next film is called No Holds Barred, a cartoon-like action picture starring wrestling champ Hulk Hogan. Unfortunately, this miserable picture has none of the dubious, campy humor of those World Wrestling Federation telecasts. In No Holds Barred, there are 2 big battles, one leading to another, as a network boss wants to have the popular wrestler played by Hogan work for his network. If they won't join you, beat them, as the TV boss arranges for Hogan's character to receive a challenge he can't refuse. Watching along with him is a pretty advertising executive played by Joan Severance.
A fighter who is both admired and vilified. A fighter who's been called both the thriller and the killer is here to be interviewed.
Those you out there.
That's Tiny Lister as Zeus in a Rocky versus Mr. T ripoff. The character of Rip, played by Hulk Hogan, isn't much fun. The big fight between Rip and Zeus is quite dull. Sometimes when you put what already is a parody up on the big screen, it falls flat. Nothing was added to the TV wrestling matches to make this movie special, save for Joan Severance, who gets, I guess, some kind of badge for having to walk through a picture and try to make some sense of it. It's a really awful kind of film.
You know, the odd thing about this movie is it's about how they're trying to fashion an image for Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan character. The funny thing about it is that they fashioned such a bad image. At some point while they were making this movie, they should have thought, what kind of a movie should we put the Hulkster in? Here is an extremely popular, famous pop character in American culture, and he's in a movie now where they get jokes about people soiling their pants, about overflowing urinals, about all kinds of vulgarity, about all kinds of disgusting behavior. And it's not that I was offended by it. I was more just appalled that the people who watch Hulk Hogan on television and little kids who have the Hulk Hogan character and they go to see this movie are just going to be offended and disappointed in it.
I already heard about one 12-year-old girl who walked in and walked out in the midway through. You have to be very bad, a very bad film to get a child to walk out of the picture. I mean, to leave the theater. I mean, you know, this is a fun time for them.
What Hulk or his advisors have done is taken a multi-million-dollar image here and really trashed it better than anybody else could do it for them. Coming up next, Robin Williams is an inspirational English teacher in the Dead Poets Society.
How can you describe poetry like American Bandstand? Well, I like Byron. I give him a 42, but I can't dance to it.
Our next movie is named Dead Poets Society, and it stars Robin Williams in a role that is not exactly blindingly original as an inspirational English teacher who urges his students to be individuals and have the courage to express themselves. Williams teaches in an exclusive Vermont prep school where he upsets years of tradition by ordering his students to tear out a school book chapter that he disagrees with.
Go on. Rip it out. Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Gentlemen, tell you what, not just tear out that page, tear out the entire introduction. I want it gone. History. Leave nothing of it.
And he takes a very direct approach when he urges them to see things from a new perspective.
See, the world looks very different from up here. You don't believe me? Come see for yourselves. Come on. Come on. Just when you think you know something, you have to look at it in another way. Even though it may seem silly or wrong, you must try. Now, when you read, don't just consider what the author thinks. Consider what you think. Boys, you must strive to find your own voice.
Williams gives a generally good performance, but I could have done without this scene, which comes uncomfortably close to the comedian's nightclub persona.
Now, many of you have seen Shakespeare done very much like this. Oh, Titus, bring your friend hither. But if any of you have seen Mr. Marlon Brando... No, with Shakespeare can be different. France, Romans, countrymen. Let me rest. You can also imagine maybe John Wayne as Macbeth going, well, is this a dagger I see before me?
And the problem is it suddenly looks like Robin Williams there instead of like Mr. Keating, the English teacher from 1959. Dead Poets Society is one more recycled version of the ancient movie formula about the war between rebellious young people and hidebound authoritarian adults and the one good teacher who's on their side. There's nothing in this movie that hasn't been done before, and great large sections of it seem to have been inspired by the classic American novel A Separate Peace by John Knowles, which was also made into a movie. As for the brilliant but eccentric teacher played by Robin Williams, he seems to have modeled himself after all of those other great movie teachers, from Mr. Chips to Miss Jean Brodie to Professor Kingsfield. We know that free spirits always get shot down in these movies, and so even the so-called surprises are predictable. The movie has a scene of tragedy that's supposed to be moving, but I didn't see it as a spontaneous act of despair. It seemed more like a requirement of the plot. And when the beloved English professor gets in trouble, somehow I just knew that his students were going to stand on their desks and protest just like he told them to. This is a movie about a man who says, "Dare to be different," and I wish the movie had taken the same dare.
I liked it more than you did. I had a problem with what I consider the same thing, this formula ending and the tragedy that's going to resolve as a kid is caught in the tug-of-war between the liberating teacher and the restrictive parent. I think that when that happens, and I was with the picture up until that point in its spirit, even as familiar as the material may be, it did move me, and it did, I guess I enjoy seeing kids being inspired, and I bought the performances. I bought actually the performances of the kids much more than I bought the performance of Robin Williams. And when he wasn't on the screen, I didn't really miss him that much.
Yeah.
I thought that they had a good community there, and I enjoyed watching that. Then the formula of the ending, the way it has to be with one kid suffering for being liberated, that was just too formula for me. Well, I like the picture, and I'd recommend
you would recommend it.
Yes.
I won't recommend it, and the reason I won't is that they didn't really try to do anything different here. I agree with you, the kids give pretty good performances.
Yeah.
But at the beginning I thought, gee, they're going to try to do this differently. They're going to leave out all of the big telegraphed characters and, you know, where they walk onto the screen and you know what their whole fate is going to be. I thought they were going to try to do that, and then they didn't. They just really did just take it right out of the textbook in terms of how these movies are always made, and I guess always will be made.
Well, you know, you put it in some pretty good company with some of these other teachers that you talked about. I think this is a small little film that's, I think, worth seeing, but not for the formula way it ends. Coming up next, Let's Get Lost, the story of the ill-fated jazz great Chet Baker. Our next film is a documentary called Let's Get Lost, about jazz trumpeter and singer Chet Baker, a charismatic artist in the 1950s and 60s whose creativity faded as he became a drug addict. Much of the film is a reminiscence by Baker about his youthful star trip. It's a shock, though, when we eventually see him at age 57, completely wasted.
I was playing every night someplace. It was a session in L.A., and I met Dexter and Tony Poindexter and Wardell Gray, Frank Morgan, who has just been playing in New York recently.
The film, directed by celebrated fashion photographer
You've been so forgetful. A kind of a stop and go forgetfulness that bothers me.
The most fascinating character in the film, other than Baker, is his longtime girlfriend, singer Ruth Young.
For they both have the very same sensation when you're lost in the magic of his kiss. Something like that. That little end thing might not have been right on it, but that's it. Yes, love and fascination. You said it, baby.
Eventually, director Weber gets Baker to talk about his drug habit.
It's a mixture of cocaine and heroin, you know. If you got the right mixture, not too much coke, you know, because that first rush of coke and...
The difficulty of enjoying Let's Get Lost is that Chet Baker is not an engaging personality when he is not performing. He is revealed as a violent, selfish drug abuser, and so we wonder why we should be paying attention to his life story. But then he starts singing, and the sounds are beguiling, even late in his life. Let's Get Lost does communicate the attraction of the jazz world. Bruce Weber, the director, has a fine sense of style, but less a notion of story construction. The film introduces Youth Young and Baker's family too late. I like the second half of the picture much more than the first half, when we got to meet his family and this fascinating groupie of the jazz world, Ruth Young, and a singer in her own right. A mixed review from me.
I give it a positive review, but not a real strong positive review, and my complaint would be that we didn't get to hear enough of the music uninterrupted by dialogue. The movie is over-mixed, if you will, so the people are always talking over jazz solos, even talking over vocals at some points, and I would have rather heard more of the music. What I liked, though, was Weber's use of the black and white photography, the way that he doesn't have just a straightforward documentary approach, but that, in a way, he finds a visual equivalent to jazz, and that he approaches things obliquely. The editing is interesting. There's a wonderfully edited scene where a photographer is marking up photographs of Chet Baker taken when he was a young man. That's much more interesting than how somebody else might have done it by just showing us those photographs in a flat way. So there's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, there is, but I wish that the film, and it's my complaint as well as yours, is that I wish the film had given us a reason to care more about Chet Baker in the beginning. I think you need that amount of structure to the picture. Let us hear the guy and let us appreciate him.
Yeah, because actually the picture assumes that people are going to know exactly who Chet Baker was and are going to be fans of his, and the fact of the matter is that his greatness came so long ago that only real jazz fans know who he is, and so you have to really sell them at the beginning, and the movie doesn't do that. Coming up next, Renegades with Kiefer Sutherland and Lou Diamond Phillips on the trail of some big city bad guys.
Let me see the money, Chief.
I wouldn't call him that. He really doesn't like that.
Our next movie is named Renegades, and it's another one of those attempts to combine the cop movie and the youth movie by giving us an undercover cop who looks like he's still in college. I know there are undercover cops that young, but that's not why they make these movies. They make them because apparently the action youth market isn't interested in old cops who are 28 or 29. This time the cop is played by Kiefer Sutherland, who goes undercover to bust a ring of jewel thieves and expose the corrupt cop who helped set up the robbery. Along the way, the jewel thieves steal an ancient Indian spear of great ceremonial value, and Lou Diamond Phillips plays the Indian who vows to get it back. That means he has to team up with Sutherland, who is chasing the same guys. But first, of course, they have to fight it out between themselves.
Oh, I'm having a good time. How about you?
Their relationship turns into a test of skill and courage in the obligatory event in movies like this, which is always rooftop jumping.
Okay, jump.
You're crazy. I gotta take a couple steps.
It never fails. Oh my God, they're chasing us. Let's run into this tenement, go up to the roof, and jump to the next building. I mean, we've seen that in every other movie this year. It should be an event in the Olympics. I'm serious. And jumping up to a higher building, they haven't tried that yet. Renegades has no ambitions at all other than to combine the standard elements of an urban action picture in a slightly new way. This is your standard undercover cop, crooked cop chase scene shootout movie combined with your standard Indians who use the lore of the tribe in the big city movie. Not a single character, a single line of dialogue, or a single situation in this movie is even slightly original. And when a bad guy steals that Indian spear in the first reel, what do you want to bet he's going to end up being killed by it in the last reel? Lou Diamond Phillips and Kiefer Sutherland are good actors, and maybe this movie is a form of paying their dues until something better comes along. I don't know, but if I were an actor, I'd beware of any movie that contains more than 3 chase scenes, because that's a dead giveaway. The filmmakers couldn't think of anything original to make a movie about.
Well, you've covered the territory. It's a really bad film, and it is just a marketing device, which is take these kids who presumably are hot, but not for making stuff like this, and run them through an old-time plot. We've seen this happen a lot. It's nothing more than a marketing strategy, and when I see that happen, right away, it just reduces the movie business to a real crass business. There's no attempt to write anything original. I don't want to say anymore. I don't want to even give the film's title repeated anymore. It's really cheap.
You know, the one thing that bothered me is at the end. You know the scene where he escapes from the burning barn in the motorcycle?
Yes.
Where did that motorcycle come from?
Inside the barn.
Was it there before?
I presume.
Did you see it there?
No, but
No.
you don't need an establishing shot.
No, of course you don't. Not in a movie like this, because if you need a motorcycle, there's always one there, right?
You got it.
I wish life were like that.
Now let's recap the movies we reviewed on this show. Neither one of us cared for Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, easily the worst film in the series. 2 more downturned thumbs for No Holds Barred, which trashes the normally joyful, campy presence of wrestler Hulk Hogan. A split vote on the formula Good Teacher, Bad Parent drama, Dead Poet Society, starring Robin Williams. Roger was bored by the formula. I enjoyed watching the community of inspired students. Another split vote on Let's Get Lost, the documentary of the late jazz great Chet Baker. We both thought the film could have used more of Baker's uninterrupted music, but Roger still recommends it because of director Bruce Weber's sense of style. And finally, 2 negative votes on that Cop and Indian movie starring Lou Diamond Phillips and Kiefer Sutherland in an infantile script. And you know, one reaction I have is that in this sequel summer, it has not been a good summer for movies so far. Maybe something will turn up, but not now.
Pretty slow going. Maybe we'll do better next week. That's it for this week, but we'll be back next week with reviews of more new movies, including Do the Right Thing, which is Spike Lee's controversial new film about racial tensions exploding one hot summer day in Brooklyn. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Thinning hair? Make it fuller, thicker, healthier looking with Vivagen Thinning Hair Enrichment Program. Shampoo and treatment from Redken. Raisinets and Goobers are playing everywhere, starring plump, juicy raisins and great golden peanuts. Both now feature creamy Nestle milk chocolate. Aveeno is not a beauty bar, but what it does for a sensitive face is simply beautiful. Cleanse with an Aveeno bar every day and you'll see. Ah, Aveeno. Palmolive dishwashing liquid, original or lemon lime, softens hands while you do dishes.